Hey, welcome to the Ethics Experts. If it's your first time joining us, welcome. And if you're a returning subscriber, hey friend, the world's a better place because you're in it. You see what happens when you subscribe to the Ethics Experts. You get a bonus greeting on every single episode. On this episode, we talked to Jade Smith from OP. She's a chief compliance officer, and she's a really forward-thinking compliance officer. She's driven a ton of change in her organization. She's gotten a ton of buy-in, and the frameworks that she shares, you can adopt literally immediately. So I hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the Ethics Experts, where we're elevating ethics and compliance and HR to the strategic level it's supposed to be.
Hey, Jade, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. So happy to have you on the Ethics Experts. So you have a really cool background. You kind of you came up in the legal field, and over the last 3 years, as your company has 3x'd its employee base on an international basis, you've really stood up a really nice compliance program. So I'd love to kind of dive into what that's like, because a lot of people struggle with that. They step into a program that's at some stage and they have some vision for what it could be in the future. And it's really hard to sometimes get the buy-in or know what to do first, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, what bets are we making in terms of like the aspects and the pillars of our program?
Yeah, exactly. So I started at this company about 6 years ago, and we had maybe 90 corporate employees and a few hundred distributors globally. And it's turned into triple that now with acquisitions and new distributors worldwide. And we're just at a rapidly growing pace. So coming into that and growing with the company has been a really great, it's just been stepping stone after stepping stone to get to where I am now.
So maybe describe what you stepped into, or when you kind of grabbed the reins of this program, what was in place? What did that sort of look like? And then how far was that from like your vision of what it could be or should be?
Yeah, so it's been a constant transition. I think day by day, my vision changes just because it's compliance field is ever evolving, right? So when I came into it, I've always been in the legal field. That's my background. So I started in the legal department with our general counsel, who's been there 15 years, and he started what they have is right now, or I'm sorry, what was the compliance program. And that was just a PowerPoint with a voiceover. And that was prior to the DOJ coming out with the corporate compliance guidelines in 2017, really stressing on the points that are needed. So it was kind of a check the box area that was being done prior to me getting there, which just kind of coincidentally happened with the 2017 guidance. And then I came in early 2018. So it kind of was perfect timing. So when I came into the role, I didn't necessarily have plans to be in compliance because it wasn't something the company was looking for. It was maybe on the horizon, but I don't think anyone really knew what it could be and how much it would be needed. It's just, we all know it's constantly more and more on the list of what needs to be taken care of and what needs to be evaluated. So when I came in, for the first 3 years, I was just on the legal side. And then I kind of got to the point where, what do I want to do next? And would that involve leaving the company? Would that involve going through a transition at my company? So I went and I spoke to our CEO and all of the executives to kind of ask their opinion and gauge them on what they think our company needs. What would be the next step for what we're needing? And I toyed around with possibly getting my JD, but I thought that's not the right path for me. And like I said, I've never considered compliance at all. That was not on my horizon of what I wanted to be. So after I got feedback, I kind of started looking into programs and thought, I think that getting my master's of law with a concentration in compliance would be best suited for where I want to go professionally. And then looking at what the company was going to need, it became something that I identified could grow and I could head, and I could make this something my own. So
let's go to that conversation when you went to the CEO. What happened in that conversation, and like what was the catalyst for that? Was that just yourself? You wanted to kind of grab hold of your career, or tell me about that conversation and what came out of it that prompted you to get that master's?
Yeah. So I've always been the type that wants to catalyst my own career on my own. I don't wait for anything. I like to be engaged with the executives and kind of make sure they know who I am, just because I do want to step up that corporate ladder. So I went to them. I've always scheduled regular meetings with them, maybe quarterly or annually, whatever time allows. But when it came to this specifically, I scheduled time with each of them within a month. And I wanted to get back-to-back feedback on what the CEO, CFO, our presidents would say about it. And when I initially spoke to our CEO, he just kind of wanted to know where I wanted to go in my profession. And I explained that I was looking at my JD, and it came up that, okay, well, we have a lot of international work that's going on right now. Maybe you can kind of foothold into that. How would that play a role into what we're doing in our legal department now? So
and was that international work being done by a third party or something?
Well, we do have outside counsel that does our FCPA due diligence, and we just needed someone that could maybe guide us more on where do we need to go, what kind of due diligence and follow up do we need to be having as far as our agreements and things like that. How do we go about our steps and processes to make sure we're doing everything correctly? So it kind of stemmed from that conversation as to leading into compliance and gave me the first idea on it. And then I spoke to our CFO, who he built on that idea as well. And he was really concerned with what are we doing in these markets in LATAM and EMEA to figure out our due diligence? And is that something that we're covering correctly as we grow in those areas?
So did they say compliance, or were they just describing compliance without saying the word?
They were describing it without saying the word. I don't like I said, it wasn't a position that was there already that they were looking for. This was it came up as all of these items surfaced, and we thought, okay, wow, it's time. What do we call this? Oh, it's a compliance officer. That's what it's called.
Right.
And my general counsel had mentioned it before, but again, it wasn't something that I was like, oh, compliance officer. Yeah, that sounds what I want to do. So after I researched it after those conversations and I saw what a master's entailed in that specific area, it really clicked and a light bulb went off that, oh, compliance is a great segue from law to go into instead of my JD. So that's where it initially came from within the company.
So you said that in your research, you kind of had this light bulb, which means that you had some kind of perception of it, beforehand, then afterwards you had this sort of different perception. What was that research, and what perception did you have on the front end that you were like, I don't think I'm really interested in that?
Yeah, I guess it wasn't a lack of interest. It was just a lack of knowledge in the field. I just didn't know about it. I had always been so laser focused on I'm getting my JD. This is what I want to do. And while I was doing that research, I was looking into online programs because I wanted to continue to work full time while I did this. And while that's not always an easy option to get your JD and do it, online and part time, I started seeing masters of law, masters of so-and-so, and I found this one specifically at Loyola in Chicago for masters of law with a concentration in compliance. And I've heard the word compliance, obviously. So when I saw that, it kind of triggered me. Oh, what's that? That looks interesting. So after I looked at the degree more, I talked to my general counsel, who is my supervisor, and he encouraged me to look into it more. So after I did that, I put together a PowerPoint presentation for all of the executives I spoke to. And I said, this is what I'm looking at. This is what it would do for me. And this is what it would do for the company. And this is how it could value us moving forward in the future as we grow. And I wanted their support in it. So I presented it to all of them and I gained all of their support. They recognized the need for it. So I think I set the groundwork early on to say, okay, this is what my plan is right now. And this is how it will benefit the company if I do this. So they've been fully on board, and it's been great to have that kind of team.
I mean, that's such a high agency move for you to set yourself up for that. Like you said, this kind of persuasion path essentially was built over time. And I find it interesting that you were able to get the benefit of the endorsement for the compliance program, the endorsement for your, master's in law. You were able to get that from a foundation you laid kind of before you even knew that was the angle that you wanted to go. And you said something earlier that I kind of have latched onto, where you said, I'm the type that, you essentially said, I'm the type to kind of grab hold of my career and I'm going to kind of create those circumstances for success down the road. Where did that come from? That takes a certain confidence and it's certain drive for, like creating optionality or creating like circumstances for success that I find a lot of people kind of struggle with. A lot of people kind of, in my experience, they don't want to come to have those kinds of conversations until in their mind, the whole path is baked.
Yeah.
But in actuality, it's like sometimes you have to kind of explore, like, you know, the journey is an exploration or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I think that I don't know where it comes from specifically in my childhood, but it has stemmed from since high school. So just a brief overview going back to that. In high school, I realized I didn't like going to high school. I thought it was a waste of my time and I wanted to work. So I looked into, I guess this would be my first presentation. I looked into options of online high school. How do I graduate early? How do I make this less of my time so I can work to get to where I want to be? So I presented to my parents. I said, hey, I was in my sophomore year. I said, hey, I don't want to be doing this anymore. It's a waste of my time. And the other kids here, they're not doing anything. Like they're just going to school and I don't like that. So I presented to them and I gave them 3 options of online schools I found. And I said, this is what I want to do. And this is why I want to do it. And here's where I want to work. And they were like, okay, let's try it out. So I did that. I graduated online early while working at a sandwich shop to pay for my car and whatnot. And from there, I got my paralegal certificate before I graduated high school. And I was actually, so I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada. And so on the Strip, there's obviously a lot of opportunity. So there was an opening at the Wynn Las Vegas for a paralegal, and it was on the nightclub side of things. So it wasn't the traditional paralegal role. And I ended up applying for it and I ended up getting it, which I credit where I'm at now to that position starting me off. Like it was a big deal when I was young to get that kind of position. So I got that position and honestly, I had so many experiences there that you wouldn't traditionally have where I needed to stand up for myself, where I was in a male dominated field. It was the nightclub industry and I was still young. I was impressionable. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to survive here, I have to figure this out quick. So I did. And from there, I was there for 3 or 4 years. And then I ended up moving to the Midwest. And it just kind of grown from there. And every position I've been in, I felt like, okay, this isn't exactly where I need to be. I need to figure out more. And that's where the direction of my JD came in. That was my next more path. And then this blossomed and it's become something that I'm turning into my own and that the company is supporting. And each time I do a new initiative, I lay it out for everyone and I test it with different people around my company before I go and present it to anyone big. And I say, hey, what do you think of this new process? How do you think this is working? And I obviously specify it to department and how it would work for them specifically. So I think that's been a big part of how I got to where I am because I'm making sure it's going to work before I go to other people and I try to present to the executives.
And so what did you just like read a blog about that? Or is that just kind of common sense to you that this is how change must have to happen?
Yeah, no, I will be honest. I have never been one to read about business and how to get to point A to point B. This kind of, I don't know if it came from just my life events, but it's common sense and natural to me to go through these steps to get to where I want to be.
So why do people struggle with that? I mean, everything you described is what I try to talk about all the time. It's like, if I'm trying to drive change in an organization full of people who voluntarily participate, who are not compelled to do what I say. I mean, even people, even the people that, work with me, they don't have to do what I say. They can not do it. They can quit. Don't get any ideas. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to like sell them on it. You have to sell them to get that authentic buy-in. And I just find so many people in our space in particular, they speak in the tense of should. They speak in the conditional sense. And that is just not persuasive at all. Oh, we should have this. It's like, well, we don't have it and the company's not burning down. How much of a need is it really? It's just speaking in should is just not persuasive to somebody that's outside of our field, who's not reading regulations and guidance from the DOJ or whatever. And to me, it's like, how else can I get people to like, participate or like engage in whatever change we're talking about unless they've bought into it? And how are they ever going to buy into it unless they feel like they're kind of a part of it? And in doing that, kind of to your point, you end up getting some feedback where maybe there's an edge you have to shave off of it, or maybe there's something you didn't consider. And it just naturally evolves into sort of a better answer, right? It's a better answer because it's a better answer because the odds of it being adopted are higher. It's a better answer because it's more thought out. There's more collaboration around it. But it's like, why do people struggle with that in this space in particular? Because to me, like you, it feels like total common sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great question to take a poll on. But I think in general, what I want to say I see is maybe it stems from the lack of confidence. Like, I am not afraid for the executives or whoever it may be that I'm presenting to say, Jade, that's a bad idea. We don't like that. And it doesn't discourage me at all from, okay, that's fine. You don't like it. Let's go on to the next thing. That doesn't bother me. And I see that a lot of times it does bother people and it may discourage them from doing it again. So if that's happened, it's a big deterrent from saying, okay, I want to redo this and represent in another way. It kind of ends up being, okay, I'm going to push that to the side because they hated it. And, I'm going to just like kind of chug along and see if it comes back up or if I can do something else that may be better. I think that pushing through is a big key to it. Like, okay, that wasn't liked. Fine. That's annoying, but let's move on to the next thing and let me get you something better. Let me pitch it differently. Let me figure out what you will like, what you do need. And I think that becomes a big roadblock.
Yeah. Do you think people's like kind of tie their self-worth to like the response that they get externally from like an idea? Like, here's me. It's just like an idea, but they like, there's so much of themselves in it that it feels almost like an attack on the ideas, an attack on the individual or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like I know that that's part of it because I've been previously and in my current position, when something happens like that, someone will come to me and say, hey, don't feel discouraged that this happened. And I'm like, why would I feel discouraged? Like, first of all, this is business. You aren't talking about my personal life and that I haven't done something personally and that, my house looks like crap. You're not attacking me.
Right.
This is something that is professional. And, we just figure out what does work. It shouldn't hurt your feelings. It should just make you want to do it better or different so that you can get that buy-in.
There's this concept called an idea meritocracy. And this was, I learned about this from Ray Dalio, who wrote this book, Principles. And the concept is that the best idea should stand, whether it's your idea or my idea or the idea from the guy delivering the sandwiches to the office. Our status or like level in the organization should have no bearing on the idea itself. That's its own thing. And I think that's like a very attractive, it's like conceptually an attractive like concept. Mm-hmm. But I find that when it comes down to it, like the deleting of your ego to engage in that kind of a conversation is like easier said than done in some ways. You know what I mean?
Yes, I agree. It is.
So like, what advice would you give somebody? I mean, is it just that, hey, this is not the end of the world. This idea is not you. This painting you made is not you. It's just some paint on a canvas. Like, how do you help them reframe that and like detach their ego or self-worth from some thing that they're presenting and, ground that more internally or something?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think sometimes when I don't have anything to say, I don't say anything. When I don't have anything that's positive enough to say, I won't say anything at all because I feel like I can be a little harsh in this space because I'm so maybe type A and it doesn't make sense to me. Why? Let's just move forward. Let's kind of get to it and finish it and figure out how to do this. So I don't know that I have any great advice for anyone that is trying to move past it except to stop internalizing it. It has nothing to do with you personally. Let's just, figure out what does work. And then that will make you feel better than how maybe bad you're feeling now. It'll outweigh that.
Yeah, that's good advice. I kind of struggle with that sometimes myself. So going back to, you find this program that you want to do at Loyola, you get the endorsement from the company. Talk to me about like what that transition was like, because you were kind of reporting to the general counsel in sort of a paralegal position. And now you're getting this new sort of layer of education on your, you're getting a new line on your resume. like, how did that stage? Was it like you did the whole course and then you kicked off the program? Was it like kind of you were doing it concurrently? Talk to me a little bit about that and how what you were learning in the course ended up influencing what you built in the order of those operations.
Yeah. So it was a 2-year program, and I did it in summers as well so that I could graduate earlier because I was still working full time while doing the master's program. I didn't want to let off on anything. So while I was doing it, we talked about it before it happened. Okay, when you finish this, we'll talk about the transition into your new role. But while I was in the program, I was building up to that. I wanted it to be an easy sell for everyone to give me this new title. So every project I had, well, not every project, but the big projects I had, I would relate it back to my work specifically. And some of them I would go to the CFO and the CEO and say, hey, this is what I'm doing for this project. How would it play out here at OP? Like, how would this specifically work here? I want to know what we're doing for our policies for anti-bribery here based on this course that I'm going through right now. So I tried to make it relate. So I did my capstone specifically on a training and education platform and how it should be laid out. And I did all the research on it and whatnot, but I specifically made it for our company. And I told my professors that's what I was doing. So they kind of gave me a little bit of flexibility on how exactly it was laid out, because I wanted to be able to present it to my executives when I was done to show them this is the value it gave to the company, but also to me professionally and my growth. But here's how we can apply it today. And I think that was maybe the biggest selling point on when I graduated, for my boss to go to them and say, hey, this is what Jade deserves. Look at the work she's been doing and she's been showing it to you. And it was an easy sell. That made it really a nice transition into this new role. And then in the meantime of that, when I graduated, I immediately got my CCEP certification just to double down and show them like, hey, I'm serious about this. I deserve this and I have the knowledge for it. It's not just because I got my degree that I deserve this role. It's because I'm putting the actual footsteps into getting there and not, know, a lot of people, I think it goes to like, okay, I have the education. Now I just deserve this. But you have to lay that groundwork to show like what you're doing is applicable.
Yeah. You seem to be a person that has like a very low, like entitlement mentality. Mm-hmm. Like your work will speak for itself, and I don't know, you just have to kind of make it happen. Like you've said the word sell like 20 times in this conversation. And that's so much of our job, like driving any change, putting something new into play in place. To the extent you need somebody else's endorsement, you have to convince them that it's worthwhile. And I think it was really smart that you were able to leverage that education time to start laying some of the groundwork and start kind of building some of those pillars that would ultimately translate into the program. Yeah,
exactly. And I think I've always been someone, regardless of personal, professional, if you don't see the worth in what I'm doing and who I am, then I don't want it, because I'm showing you what I'm capable of and I'm showing you how good this is. I know how good it is. And if you don't see it, then that's not my problem. It's yours. So I think that's really spoken for itself when it comes to me professionally, because I put in the effort and I put in the quality and I'm efficient with it. So if that's not showing, then something's not clicking, or maybe I need to speak to someone about what am I doing wrong, which I've done before. Like, why don't you like this? Why did I get bad feedback on this newsletter? What didn't you like about it? And that's something I consistently do still.
Yeah, it's like you need both kind of a confidence, supported by your evidentiary history of success, but also like an openness for feedback and openness that, I still have more to improve personally, professionally, whatever. I think that circuit, either one of those things, lacking. I mean, if this one's lacking, it's, you lead to that entitlement thing. And if this one's lacking, then you can never like get the train out of the station. You never have the confidence to ask for the sale after a couple of no's, or you don't have the confidence to like really engage with, well, why? I see this very clearly as an answer. You seem to not. What are we missing here? And a lot of folks I talk to, they really struggle with that. They really struggle with those, those power asymmetry conversations, which is where we need to like live. We need to like thrive in those those kind of conversations because that's where stuff gets done. Of course, there's like the regular kind of like bucket of work where it's like processing of things that are already in place. But to elevate anything, something has to come unstuck. Something has to, change. And that change is going to first start in the mind of whoever holds the keys to the kingdom. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I do. I think that is a big problem, regardless of what industry you're in. But I specifically compliance because it is constantly, okay, what don't you like? What do I need to do to make sure that everyone's listening to me? Am I educating properly? What doesn't this person like that doesn't specify to them? It's constant follow up to make sure you don't want to satisfy everyone, because if you try to please everyone, you'll please no one. So, right. But the majority of people, you need to have them on board with what you're doing.
So you get your CCEP, you start kind of building this program. I'd love to talk a little bit about what the dynamic has been like, what's the dynamic been like as you've taken over something that was really owned by the general counsel, albeit with a PowerPoint presentation. How were you able to navigate any resistance that came? Because sometimes, the thing that we hear about a lot is there's this sort of different lens that, general counsel might look at the world through versus what compliance might look at the world through. There's a bit of a different kind of mandate for these functions while related. So did you encounter any of those kinds of any of these dynamics I'm talking about, and how did you navigate it?
Yeah. So fortunately, I've been very lucky to have the supportive team that I do. So my general counsel, although he's legal, he's very open-minded, and he's been a big part of my process getting to where I am with the encouragement and support of what I'm doing. So I'm not saying I haven't met any resistance, but I've probably met very minimal compared to what others face. I have the buy-in of the executives. I have the buy-in of general counsel. And I've been working towards getting the buy-in of the board of directors as well in the past year and a half, to kind of make sure they're involved in things more than they were. So for our company specifically, I think a lot of the buy-in comes from the feedback they're getting from everyone else from our company. We have subsidiary companies now. We've done 4 or 5 acquisitions at this point. So they get feedback from the VPs that are now at that company. When I go to visit the company and the spiel that I'm giving to represent compliance, what are the heads thinking and reporting back to the CEO? And that's kind of where I've had a little bit of turmoil, is getting these new companies on board, trying to explain specifically, why is this important? Why do you guys need to have it? Because they're companies that didn't have any sort of compliance program to begin with. So that's been a little bit of a hurdle, I would say.
So let's dive into that, because I'd love to talk about how you get that adoption at the portfolio or at the subsidiary level. And then we can maybe talk about what this process of getting buy-in at the board level has been. But just tell me a little bit about that, because, again, there's so many dynamics in an acquisition. There's so much fear. There's people are worried about their mortgage and their health insurance and am I going to get fired? So there's multiple layers of this aversion or something that it's not the free flowing, collaborative environment that maybe you have at the parent company or something. Right. So you said you've done 4 or 5 acquisitions. So you've presumably had these conversations 4 or 5 times. What have you learned along the way? And what's the kind of recipe that you bring to the next acquisition so you don't, trip over the hurdle? You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. So I think the first few times it didn't involve an in-person visit from myself. And part of that is because I was still getting my footing with the position in general, but it was fairly easy to kind of take them under our wing because they didn't have anything to begin with, and they were smaller companies. But as we grow and we start to acquire bigger companies with more people, it's certainly going to face more resistance, just inevitably.
Right.
So with the last 2 bigger sized companies we've had, we said, okay, what would make this easier? And I think a face-to-face visit with everyone, so everyone can put a face to a name. You're seeing my emails all the time. You're seeing my name, but you don't know who I am. You can't connect with me. And I think that's made the biggest impact on my position in general, is going there, sitting down with people. And then I gave a presentation to the entire organization on why I'm doing this. What's the point of this? And I made a game in it and made it kind of interactive. You can only make compliance so fun, right? But I like to do, I have made specific compliance swag that I give out when I go. So, they're kind of lingering out around all of our subsidiary companies, which is kind of cool. And I think the biggest part of the acquisitions is me going there and making sure they knew who I am, being a touch point for them, and making that consistent. So annually, I think I'll start going to these companies, touching base with them, figuring out if there's needs that I'm missing and things like that.
And so I think humanizing yourself is like the absolute key. That's what you obviously did within your own organization and the other job that you mentioned. And so I think that's super smart. Tell me a little bit about that game you played and like what did that swag look like?
Yeah, so the swag started in, I think 2022, I did the first compliance swag, and we had one of our bigger companies that had come on, and they got some swag. So I got a lot of feedback after compliance week is when I first did it, and I had games every day, and then I sent out swag for winners who participated. But then I got feedback and pictures of, oh my gosh, I love this sweatshirt. It's actually really great quality. And it's a good color. It's not like an ugly yellow or something that is just branded that no one wants to wear. I put time into, okay, what am I specifically looking for? Would I wear this? And is the quality good? Because I don't want it to go in the back of someone's drawer and never come out, right?
Yeah. What's the point then? Yeah.
I think it makes a difference. It's something very small, but it makes a difference when you're giving people nice stuff. And when they're walking around this subsidiary and this organization wearing that compliant sweatshirt, people are seeing compliance. No matter how you see it, they're seeing it and they're talking about it. Oh, that's a cute sweatshirt. You got that from OP? Cool. How can I get one?
Right.
And so from then on in 2022, it kind of became a joke as, oh, the coveted compliance swag, because I only give out so many during compliance week.
Right. There's some scarcity on that swag.
Yeah. So I really built on that. And that's what I'm doing again this year. I've done it this will be the third year now. But I think that, so the game that I did at the presentation for the last company, it was more, so I did an icebreaker, but I never called it an icebreaker because we all know that's a no-no.
Yeah.
And I did the toast analogy of like, how do you make toast? And that's all I put on the screen. And I wanted everyone who was there to participate and kind of lay out how they made it. And I was looking for the different ways people did this. Like, do they start at the wheat field and then that's how bread is made and then it gets to the store and then it gets to the toaster? Or did people just say, okay, I put the bread in the toaster? And I built on that from saying, okay, we all get to the same goal, the same way, but we're all getting there in different ways. So the way I've portrayed compliance is that, okay, we all have this end goal of OrthoPediatrics wants to help kids. That's our underlying goal and our mission. We are helping kids around the world. And that's what every subsidiary company in our organization, that's always our goal. That's the main thing we're tied to.
That's the toast.
That's the toast. That's it. So however you get there, we all may have different ways of getting there, and we all may have joined the organization at different times through different companies, but this is our main objective. And that's how the toast kind of played in. And I built on that throughout the presentation, but I got good feedback on it. It seemed to go over well, unless they were just being nice.
Where'd you come up with that?
I was Googling like how to start a presentation, and I saw it. I can't recall exactly what the type of food was, but there was a different type of food that someone else did it with. And I thought toast might be more simple for people to draw out.
Well, that's such a cool analogy. I think that's so smart. And then what did you do for Compliance Week? I mean, it's coming up again.
Yeah.
What did you do last year? What do you have planned for this year?
So every year it's gotten a little bigger. Last year I did, it was not as advanced as this year. I did word search and puzzles, but you had to like print them out, and I didn't figure out a way how to do it online.
Mhm.
And I did a meme challenge as well. That was fun for everyone. But this year I figured out how to do it electronically, where there's a crossword puzzle and it gives you the definition. So you need to know the definition to fill out the crossword puzzle, right? And that's
Got you.
online.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's online. And then I put an education point in our LMS system. So it links you to the puzzle, an education overview, and then I put a couple questions. And I kind of use that format for every day. And then what I'm really proud of this year, though, is I got about 10 of the executives in leadership to give me a 10 to 30 second video of why compliance is important to them.
Amazing.
And I strung together a video of all of our leadership from subsidiary companies to the headquarters, so from the board of directors, so that everyone can recognize someone that they know. And I put that together and it came out like, I love the video. I think it came out really well. And I think it'll be impactful because people are seeing, okay, our leadership is endorsing this.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
on board with this. They like this. So that will be my Friday capper of everything.
I mean, there's like no excuse to not do this stuff in my book.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not that hard. Everybody has a camera on their phone.
Exactly.
They can Slack those to you. You can
It's
put those
free.
together in CapCut for free. I mean, it's just not that hard, you know?
Yeah.
I'm just shocked by how few people are doing what you're talking about. Because like, you didn't have to spend a lot of money to do that. You didn't have to spend a lot of money to find a freaking word search and, you know, Google a couple of these other little things. But it's like, okay, well, again, you have this toast as this goal and you're going to figure out a way to get to it.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me a little bit about that. I mean, is it just kind of the way you're wired? Was it a light bulb moment? Is it just a desire to like continuously improve and say like, okay, this is what we did last year. I can make some small tweaks to it. Talk to me about that, because I just feel like there's so much influence that we in compliance leave on the table. It's not a big ask to ask a leader to spend 30 seconds reading this script onto their phone. It's just not a big ask, but it can be so impactful. To your point, everyone hears, oh, wow, okay, this is not just the compliance officer talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. That has a lot of influence, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. I think that just building up to it is going to be the key. I lost my train of thought here.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying that like just thinking about this vision probably allows you the creative space to say like, okay, well, this is an incremental change that might move me closer. This is an incremental change that can move me closer.
There it goes. So as I'm doing this, I'm kind of picturing, okay, what can compliance become? What can this position become? And as we grow and as we have each new company add on, I'm thinking about how I want to be at the top of this department. I want to be heading it. I want to have other compliance, whether it's at the headquarters or at the subsidiary companies, doing this as well. And maybe that becomes part of the compliance champions network that people do. Maybe it's something along those lines. Mm-hmm. But as I grow, I want to keep proving myself and I want to keep proving the worth of compliance. And I think that might be why I've gotten good buy-in, is because I've never been one to sit back and just say, okay, this is good for now. Let's just see how this works out. Yeah, I've continually over the past 6 years shown them, this is what I'm doing this year. And I execute them. And then I do more. And it's never been, okay, Jade met her goals. Like, she did a good job this year. I've always written down, like, here's what I want to do this year. And then at the end of the year, I say, here's what I did. And here's also the additional stuff that I did that wasn't planned. And this is why I deserve X, Y, and Z for this department. Or this is why we should do this next year and make it bigger and better. And that's why I've gotten a bigger budget. You know, we do have the subsidiaries now, and I need more money for more swag, whatever that may be. But that wouldn't get approved if people weren't noticing it, right? It wouldn't, people wouldn't be, say, the CFO wouldn't approve that budget if it wasn't something that they thought was adding value to our company and our culture.
So how do you make sure that the CFO sees that it's adding value beyond seeing somebody walk by with a compliance sweatshirt? Yeah,
I do quarterly updates with my CEO, CFO, and the general counsel of what happened this quarter with compliance, what's going to happen next quarter with compliance, and so then at the end of the year, it's a recap of the whole year and then my outline of the next year.
And how do you make sure that those quarterly things pass the who cares test? from a CFO perspective or from a CEO perspective? Because presumably, you know, you would read that, I would read that and say, okay, that all makes sense. But many times these different, you know, adversaries, to use that word, they might not see the world that way. So how do you make sure that it resonates with this diverse audience?
Yeah, I think that's something that I probably have struggled with in the past. And I've seen where slides I've had maybe glazed over.
Yeah.
So that's something where I can definitely improve upon. Most of the time, it's been, how are we relating this initiative to our culture, where we can keep making sure that this is spreading amongst all of our companies.
Okay.
And that's a really big ticket item, I think, because we need to make sure everyone's in line with what we're doing. And the way I spread the message then has a big part to do with that. It also comes back to, okay, what can we get fined if we, you know, what is part of the DOJ's expectations, and are we meeting them, because we don't want to have this happen to us. So that, I mean, money obviously always plays into it. But I think it's become one of the company's corporate objectives. I believe we have 10 or so. And last year it was added that compliance and a culture of compliance, it was added to the objectives list. So I think that was a really big deal too.
Huge win. Yeah.
Yeah. So it became more of, okay, what are we doing in this department to further it and to grow it? So I've gotten good buy-in for everyone to help me nurture it, because it's still growing.
I mean, there's so much in that answer. That was great. But it seems like you've done a good job of finding a thing that matters, an ethereal thing that matters, you know, helping kids across the world and tying that into your initiatives. I mean, you just said this is a cultural piece. We want to make sure, you know, you've done a nice job, it sounds like, of marrying the compliance with the ethics to kind of reinforce this culture of compliance or this culture of integrity. Do you think that was a light bulb moment for leadership, you know, loosely leadership? Because many times I think they think if it's like, okay, we're just going to, you know, this function is to keep us, you know, out of trouble. It's to keep us from getting fined. But there's also this whole other aspect of it that can really generate a ton of actual value in a company, from adherence to a principle or adherence to the mission, or, you know, the culture being actually lived out in the day-to-day delivery of like your company's value prop.
Yeah, I think that this stems from, we have a really unique company because we have a lot of people that have come from big ortho, Zimmer, Johnson & Johnson, right? And we are a smaller company that started just from a little, 10, 15 employees, and now it's grown to this tremendous value. But most of those people move over, right, from this big company. So they have set in their head exactly what you're saying. Compliance is no. Compliance, like, why would we go to them? They are just going to hinder what we want to do. That's the view. So early on, I got advice from one of our presidents who told me, we need to make the culture of compliance something different. We don't want people to view you as just the no department, and only strictly legal either.
Was that already on your radar as like something to fight? Or was that just like really reinforced by this individual?
No, I don't think it was. I think it was reinforced by him to make it this way, to make sure I'm portraying it as everyone can come to me. I always had an underlying view of, I want to make sure people feel comfortable coming to me, that I'm open, that I'm not just saying, no, here's the guidelines, that's not going to work. Right. I always make it a point to say, okay, well, let's figure out what we can do. And if we can't do this, can you do this? Or whatever it may be. So I think that's been a really big part of it. And the humanization factor we talked about earlier plays into it as well. But a big point that my leadership likes to see is when I tell them I had X, Y, and Z people from sales, from Germany, from our subsidiary reach out to me and ask me these questions. Can they give this gift to a doctor? Can they go to dinner with this person or give out whatever they need to give out during the holidays? So that's been a really big selling point when I tell them.
It's proof it's working.
Exactly. Proof it's working.
It's proof that it's kind of top of mind for guys. It's proof that your function is becoming actualized. It's not just you're pushing stuff out, there's stuff being pushed in to you. I mean, that's when the circulatory, I talk about compliance as this potential circulatory system in an organization where we're crowdsourcing risk intelligence and we're providing these insights back. That's when the thing is really, really humming. That's when it's helping the vehicle of business run down the road so much faster. but so many people struggle with kind of getting over that tipping point to where it's really engaged and it's really delivering these nutrients to the body, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it.
So I know we have a couple of minutes left. When you're coming into a company, what's your, whatever, you acquire a company, they don't have a compliance function. Like, what is your order of operations, or what's your recipe to start to stand that up in the company? Is it just like, start doing this training? Is it like, hey, we need to like integrate your policies with ours? Is it, I'm going to push, enterprise-wide disclosure tool, or I'm going to push our disclosure tool across, the companies? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
What's that methodology?
I think that's still growing, but as far as it has been to this point, and what I hope it becomes, is that we acquire them and then they have no education system whatsoever. So the first part is, okay, let's get them on our system. Let's get them trained through our compliance training so they can see the basis of what we're doing here. They know what we stand for. So we get them all through the training that I have online. And then the next part of that, I think, should be me going there and giving the presentation of why they did that, what it means to them, and them meeting me. Immediately after the last one I did, I had gotten a call from someone, hey, I'm so glad we have a compliance person now. I want to talk about this. I didn't know who to go to before. And that was really cool to deal with because that's just something that hadn't come up before. So I think moving forward, that would be the structure is, okay, we get them on board so they can see what this is. And then me going out there and giving them the live presentation of why they just did that and what it should mean to them. Focusing on the specifics of how does this relate to your company and you guys is obviously beneficial in any situation.
I love talking to kind of like next generation compliance people like you, because you're kind of a figure it out, get it done type of a person. You're willing to experiment. You're willing to get creative to like, achieve this end or to like achieve this goal. And you can't do that without humanizing yourself. You can't do that without being a business person first. And so it's just, this is a really, really fun conversation. And, I don't know, it's so cool to see, it's so cool to hear about, an acorn that grows into an oak tree. And while you might be at like a sapling phase right now, it's growing so healthy. And the things that you're talking about and the way that you've talked about how you interact with the business and how you interact with these different levels of stakeholders is kind of the recipe that like we're always talking about. And we're always trying to get people to do more of, because there's so much value in unlocking this circulatory system. Like there's so many organs in the body that are atrophied because they're not getting the nutrients they need. They're not getting the oxygen they need. You know what I'm saying? There's too many toxins there. And so when we can really unleash that, there's so much magic that comes. And just because we can't quantify every single, dollar and cent tied to every single initiative doesn't mean that, well, we shouldn't do those initiatives. Yeah.
I think obviously having a supportive group of leadership is going to be key, but if you have to get them there, then get them there with facts.
Get them there. Exactly.
Like you just need to present the facts to them, tell them why. And if that comes with saying X, Y, and Z for monetary reasons, fine. You need to do what you need to do. And then you can do what you want to do. So it's just how you get there, maybe not putting a timeline on it, but figuring out how to get there.
Okay, last question. Okay.
Yeah.
You find a time machine and you go and find a young Jade. Okay. What piece of advice would you give yourself? What piece of advice do you wish you had when you were younger?
What piece of advice do I wish I had when I was younger? Yeah, I would probably say I did school quickly, but I say I would probably do it quicker than I did. I want to find what I wanted to do faster so that I could be at a more advanced point than I am now. If I would have done my master's, even concurrently with my bachelor's, I could have been 5 years ahead of where I am now. And maybe figuring that out, maybe talking to more people, networking more would have been more beneficial to me. That's something I didn't do much. I was so laser focused on what I thought I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So I think branching out probably would have helped me.
I love that. Well, this was really fun, really inspiring conversation. Thanks for being so generous with your experience and your frameworks and stuff. Where can people get in touch with you? Just send us, I just want your home address here.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably the best place. Jade Smith. And then I'm at OrthoPediatrics. If you find me there, I hope that everyone connects. And I really like your podcast. So I'm glad I was able to be on it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming on. All right, we'll see you next time.
You.